Chapter 13 The Disturbing Find October 22, 2007, 12:52 p.m. Sue leaned on her shovel while passing a glove across her sweaty cheek.
"Not bad if I do say so myself,"
she said proudly. The morning hours had been a grueling display of her workhorse abilities. Every pile of raked hay had been cleared from the yard and deposited well into the woods. All of the encroaching boughs and sprawling shrubs had been pruned into shape, and once the clippings had been taken care of, Sue's attention had shifted back to the half-completed rock garden. Somehow she had removed the massive wagon wheel from the cellar, rolled it across the yard, and buried it to the hub next to the tree stump. Presently she was standing back admiring the latest addition to her landscaping project.
"With a little creativity,"
she thought. The wooden spokes and rim gave the garden a much-needed touch of character, as well as a nifty rustic flair. However, the smooth mound surrounding the stump-wheel combination was missing the obvious.
"We can't have a rock garden without rocks."
Sue directed her well-used wheelbarrow onto Conestoga Way for one final trip into the woods. Luckily and conveniently for her, the New England landscape had a bountiful supply of rocks which came in every color, shape, and size. The jagged heads of countless possibilities poked through the compost of the forest floor. She pushed all the way to the dilapidated wooden gate at the boundary wall and began her search for the right collection. In an efficient display of plucking, the wheelbarrow quickly became heaped with an abundant variety.
"Just a couple more good ones ought to do it,"
she said before setting out toward a thick outcropping of rocks along the stone wall. Her forward momentum jerked to a halt when one of her footfalls caused a section of ground to shift. As she looked down and lifted the weight of her foot, a raised rectangle of leaves fell flush with the ground. She dropped to her hands and knees to investigate the area she had just seen move. With a careful wipe, a section of flat rock became exposed. Something appeared to be engraved on it, but thick loam was caked into the shallow scribing. She removed her glove and carefully etched the dirt out of the lines with a stick.
"Memento Mortis."
As she slid her fingertips under the slab and began tilting the piece upward, a large red centipede scurried from the exposure into the surrounding leaves, giving her a good startle. Seeing that the insect wanted nothing to do with her, she settled in and brushed the remaining crusted dirt from the tablet. It now became evident that she had unearthed a piece of history, a gravestone circa the American Revolution. A thrill ran through her as she read the faint epitaph. Several areas of the inscription had worn smooth, but the remaining legible characters were adequate clues to the deceased individual's story. Memento Mortis, in memory of Miss Hester Bauer, who died November 20th, 1789, in the 39th year of her age.
"I can't believe it,"
Sue whispered. She lowered the stone back into place and began towing the nearby pine needles. When a second rectangular section flipped upward, she let excitement give her a happy zap.
"How awesome is this? My very own cemetery!"
By sheer accident, a new project had been added to the landscaping list. She would spend the following day on the ground in the woods doing the two things she did best, caring and restoring. After procuring the last of the rocks and placing them into her wheelbarrow, she lifted the heavy cargo and headed back toward the garden. There was one final step to be done before these rocks could be incorporated into the presentation. One very big step. She went inside where she found the work crew polishing off the remnants of their lunch.
"What did I miss?"
Roger toasted her with his thermos cap. "Roast beef subs."
Sounds good.
"We've got an extra half. It's yours if you want it."
"You don't mind?"
"It's going in the garbage otherwise."
"I'll take it, thanks. Just leave it on the table there. I'll pick it up later when I'm ready to eat."
She swept a look around the room.
"Getting close, huh?"
"Yeah, shouldn't take us more than a few hours to finish."
"Great. Hey, listen. Before you guys start back to work, do you think you could give me a hand with something outside?"
Her question spurred Roger to roll up his sleeves. "What do you need?"
"Your strong muscles. To lug something for me."
The compliment went over very well. All three men puffed up with their chests pushed forward and shoulders pulled back. "Just show us the way."
"So your break's over?"
"You bet."
"Okay, good. Follow me."
She brought them out to the yard and pointed to the rock garden.
"I'm almost done with my project back there. The only problem is that I can't do the finishing touch on my own."
A sly smirk crossed her face.
"That's where you guys come in."
She led Roger and his men down the open bulkhead into the cellar.
"What do you think the chances are of moving that?"
she asked, motioning to the monstrous boulder at the far end of the front room. Roger walked over to inspect its dimensions. "It sure is a big sucker, but I don't think it'll be a problem. I've got some nylon strapping and a dolly in the truck. We can roll this thing wherever you want." He turned to his helper and said, "Hey, Red, go get those things, would you? Oh, and grab the crowbar while you're at it." "You got it." he replied while scuffing across the cement floor to the bulkhead. Who's Reverend Benjamin Potter? Sue and Gary glanced at one another, thinking Roger had directed the question to the other. With a shrug, Sue replied,
I don't know. Who is Reverend Benjamin Potter?
His name is chiseled into the back of this rock.
It is?
All three of them crowded into the space between the boulder and wall while Sue read the inscription aloud.
In the name of our Lord and Savior, I vest this blessed stone. Reverend Benjamin Potter, January 1790 A.D.
1790? Wow! This place is even older than you, huh? Sue gave the head carpenter a light slap.
Watch it.
Gary crouched onto one knee and touched the black liner on the base of the rock. What's this stuff?
As far as I can tell, it's beeswax.
Roger bent to get a closer look. What do you suppose it's for?
Your guess is as good as mine.
A sharp banging noise swung their heads in unison toward the bulkhead stairs. Red had taken a brutal tumble and was lying pinned on the floor. Here's the things you asked for, he announced, as if nothing had just happened. Roger ran over and pulled the dolly off his helper's chest. Are you all right? He asked, trying to control his laughter. It's all good. He picked himself up and finished his original mission by carrying the dolly, crowbar, and strapping over to the boulder. Good job, Red, Roger said as seriously as he could. He put a heavy boot on the side of the rock in an attempt to move it some, but failed miserably. Hey, Gary, give me a hand here. For the next couple of minutes, he and Gary wrapped the boulder with the nylon strapping. When they were done, they had multiple leads extending away from its side. Okay, each of you grab one of those, and when I count to 3, you give it all you've got. The men each took hold of a strap and prepared for the tug of war. After turning away from the rock with the link slung over his shoulder, Roger addressed his men. Ready? Let's see the muscles Sue was talking about. Red went into a grimace as he yanked wildly on his strap. Roger lowered a stare on his employee. Hey, I said on 3. Oh yeah, sorry, boss. All right, once again, here we go. 1, 2, 3. The men leaned on their cords with all their weight, tugging and fighting to no avail. The boulder did not budge from its spot on the floor. Roger's threshold for patience succumbed to the throbbing rush that was in his head. This task was now a personal challenge. No rock was going to outmatch his brawn. What's going on with this thing? He muttered before grabbing the crowbar from the nearby wall. Look out! Get out of my way! With a forceful stab, the tip of the tool buried into the blackened wax around the base. Give me that cement block over there. Gary quickly fulfilled his boss's temper-driven wish. Roger shoved the block between the floor and the crowbar. Let's see you stay still now, he growled. Like a raging bull, the carpenter worked the lever against the boulder while the others increased the effort by pulling with all their might on the strapping. Suddenly, in a scraping moan, the boulder lurched upward a few inches. Hold it right there, Roger yelled. He testingly released the bar and saw that the stone remained partially propped. In an athletic move, he fell to a prone position and peered into the darkened wedge under the rock. No wonder! Not only was the rock sitting on the floor, it also had a long protrusion growing from its underside like a blackhead in a pore. Roger stuck his hand into the open space to rub the exposed section. Boss, what the heck are you doing? Gary hollered with his eyes bulging. Get your hand out of there! Sue held her breath as her imagination played out an awful picture of the boulder crushing his arm. There's some more stuff written under here. I can't read it, though. To the relief of all, he retracted his hand back to safety and stood up. Where were we, boys? Taking hold of the embedded crowbar, he shouted, Let's show this thing who's boss! With another concerted pull, the stone slid further out of its hole, then further. All 3 men jumped when a blast of air flowed against their legs and rippled across the floor in an expanding ring of dust. As the rock came out of the hole with the ground shaking taut, each member of the crew desperately covered their mouths and noses. The wave hit Sue just as she began to wonder what was happening. A putrid odor flared her nostrils and gagged her throat.
What is that?
She sputtered. Roger stripped off his outer shirt and began waving it about to circulate the air. I don't know, but it's disgusting, whatever it is. Hey, look, Gary managed to say between coughs. You can see the rest of that Potter guy's message. Everybody congregated around the rock to read the perfectly etched lettering on the protrusion. With the vigilance of our Lord Jesus Christ, this gateway to hell forever will be sealed. Amen. Red began to fiddle with the pencil he had stashed in the brim of his Bruins hat. Man, this is bugging me out. What do you think it means? Roger asked. After several moments of silence, Sue pointed to the flashlight that was clipped on his work belt.
I don't think we'll ever know, unless we take a look.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Hey, Gary, give me a hand, would you? What do you want me to do? Just hold my legs when I tell you to. Sure. Roger took his flashlight and shined it into the hole. I'd say it's about 6 foot deep by 3 foot wide, and then it angles off to somewhere. He knelt at the edge and started to lower himself hand over hand, pushing outward on the rounded wall. Okay, Gary, make sure you hold me good. I got you, boss. That draft's still coming out of here. I can feel it on my face. My God!
What is it?
Sue asked. You've got to see this.
What?
It's a tunnel of some kind.
A tunnel?
Yeah, goes about 30 or so feet, then bends. I can't tell what's after that. Hey, let go of my ankles, would you? You sure? Gary asked. Yeah, I'm touching the floor.
Go ahead.
Sue said coaxingly.
I'd like to go down too.
Whatever you say. Once Roger was reoriented onto his feet, he propped his head just above the opening. Are we all in? Red's complexion turned to the color of his name. Oh, no. I'm not going into that thing. Easy does it, big guy. It's an open invitation. All I'm saying is that what you have there is a really deep hole, and no way you're going to get me into one of those things. I've seen what can happen on that show, Most Dangerous Rescues 3. People suffocating and everything. Okay, Roger said in a calming voice. Look, why don't you and Gary hang together while Sue and I check this out? That's probably the smart thing to do anyway. Fine with me. Let her borrow your light, would you? Red freed the small flashlight that he had attached to his keyring and passed it to her. Ain't much, but it'll get you around all right.
Thanks.
Sue said, sitting herself on the edge with her feet dangling into the hole.
You sure there's enough space for both of us?
No doubt. It's tight at first, but widens out as you get further along.
Okay, here goes.
With a push, she hopped down to the subfloor. She stooped low to see the 30-foot length Roger had mentioned.
Wow, who would have ever guessed?
The initial opening required her to actually drop to all fours and crawl through, but soon enough she was able to adjust and waddle forward like a duck. The walls were strangely textured, as if fashioned by the point of a pickaxe or some other similar tool, and many spots were glistening with condensation. While the smell in the cellar had been rousing, the air in this underground cavity was as foul as anything they had ever experienced. Methane and sulfur pressed the back of Sue's throat like an inserted finger, causing bile to reflux painfully in her chest.
Is that awful or what?
Ugh, horrible.
I hope it's not poisonous.
There's no telling, Roger said, glancing back at her. Do you want to bail, just in case?
Do you?
I asked you first. Sue giggled nervously.
I'm sure we'll be fine. Just go already.
What the heck? We only live once, right?
Right, but please, be careful.
You too. Stick real close. They crept into the receding darkness and soon were upon the bend. As they passed out of view of the cellar light, they discovered a second leg which continued for roughly 25 more feet before swerving hard to the left. Each step was an exercise in faith, taking them further and further from their way of escape. If anything were to go wrong now, Red's fear of wriggling into the confined space would be very seriously tested. When they turned the corner, the passage took on a whole new level of difficulty, for as far as their lights would shine, roots, from large to small, were growing down through the ceiling. Some were simply hanging freely, while others were connected to a sidewall or all the way to the floor.
We must be under the woods,
Sue said, pushing a long hanger aside. You don't say.
Call me a master of the obvious.
Roger nudged her playfully and squirmed ahead into the nutrient-seeking obstacle course. After a hard-fought struggle of many twists and tight squeezes, they came to a section of tunnel that pitched at a considerable downward angle and became narrower as it went. I think the explorer in me is ready to throw in the towel, Roger said, shining his light into the depths. It's getting steeper than I can handle. Sue pushed up firmly against his back.
Wait, what's that?
What's what?
There, where your light is.
Roger peered down to where the tunnel was no more than a shoulder width in diameter and saw the gleam she was talking about. I'd say it's a bottle.
You're right.
Squeezing by, she said,
Excuse me, I'm gonna go get it.
Sue, let's not do anything stupid here. I mean, what if you have a problem getting back up?
Then throw me a rope and pull me out.
Before he could stop her, she was descending the slope inch by inch on her backside. When she finally slid alongside the artifact, an audible gasp escaped her lips. What is it?
You don't have a choice on this one. Get your butt down here.
In the next moment, she was gone. Roger used her method of descent, which worked quite well, even with his big frame. At the bottom, he too released a gasp. Sue was standing before him, fully upright, in a spacious chamber. It just keeps getting better.
Doesn't it, though? Take a look at this.
Sue said, pointing to rows of cubbyholes that were carved into the wall. Inside of each were collections of trinkets and residue-filled vials, like the one they had seen on the floor of the room's entrance. "What are they?"
Could be anything.
Sue said, inspecting a slender bottle with a cork at the top.
Dried perfumes, maybe? Or medicines? I don't know.
"Huh, wonder if they're worth anything,"
I wouldn't doubt it.
she mumbled, pocketing a few of the nicer pieces. Roger searched a slightly higher crevice where he discovered a spiraled goat's horn. Placing it against his forehead, he asked, "Is this me or what?"
No comment, unicorn boy.
"Geez, tough crowd." While Sue went back to perusing the wide array of items, Roger's flashlight zeroed in on something peculiar on the far side of the room. A very neat pile of rocks was arranged along the wall. He paced over and scooped one up, finding nothing out of the ordinary about it. Rolling it aside, he did the same to another, then to two more. On his fifth try, a gust of offensive wind blew from the spot the rock had just vacated. Roger became animated. "Hey, Sue, come quick!" He started rolling rock after rock off the pile. Before long, he was looking through an opening at a much larger cavern. A cavern that had something very interesting lining its floor. "What are those?"
Son of a gun.
Sue whispered.
They're rail car tracks.
"What? Can't be."
Oh, yes, they can. Supposedly, there's an old abandoned mine right up the street from me.
"And you think that's it?"
Stands to reason. Come on, let's find out.
They crawled through the space and dropped into an expansive mine shaft. Huge support timbers stood like monoliths throughout, although many were either dislodged from the squared roof and walls or balancing precariously out of joint.
This is amazing.
Sue said, shining her light all around. "If I didn't see this with my own eyes, I'd never believe it."
Well, start believing.
"I am. Where do we go from here?" Sue considered the options before signaling to the left.
I'd say that way, where that dripping sound's coming from.
"Good enough." They traipsed onward, making sure to carefully sidestep any fallen timbers and debris. As they rounded another curve, both were given a shock they would not soon forget. Hanging from the ceiling like spiders were several wooden figures constructed of twined branches. They were arranged in a circle around a gruesome centerpiece, a mass of suspended animals, freshly skinned and flowing blood into an ornamental cistern. The granite walls were covered in the most deplorable graffiti imaginable. 666, Vicar of Satan, number 1, The Hate Mongers, Welcome to the Devil's House, Kill or be killed, We are the children of violence, Worship thyself, Pagan power, Hate authority, profanity of every degree, and pictures depicting vivid acts of perversion and bestiality. The buzz of flies was everywhere, attracted to heaps of bones, rotting animal remains, and widespread trash. Underfoot, a giant pentacle was dug into the dirt floor. Sue clutched her chest and stared in horror at this defiled theater.
What is this?
"It's the answer to Reverend Potter's inscription," Roger said, fuming. "This is hell." He stormed across the pentacle and kicked the cistern onto its side, spilling the red contents into a pool. "These kids should be shot for doing this stuff." With a great yank, he ripped the animals from the ceiling and laid them carefully off to the side. "If I ever catch someone doing this, I'm telling you, they'd be sorry they ever met me."
How can people be so sick?
It's scary, isn't it? I mean, killing poor animals, and for what?
Do you think they might still be here?
Roger shot his flashlight into full coverage, finding nothing. "If they are, they're too chicken to come out." He suddenly went white as a ghost and took a seat on a fallen beam. "Man!"
Are you okay?
"Yeah, I just feel like I'm gonna hurl. This stink is really starting to get to me."
You're not alone.
"Why don't we get out of here? I've had just about all I can take of this insanity."
Okay.
Roger tapped her upper arm. "Hey, at least we know what the smell's coming from."
Yeah, and we also know why Potter had such an aversion to this place.
"Yeah, now we know." He pondered this for a moment. "I kinda wish we didn't."
Me too.
"When we get back, I'm gonna give a buzz to my buddy down the precinct. I've got my cell phone on my tool belt."
Good idea. Maybe they'll be able to find out who did this.
"Let's hope." Roger grimaced as he put a hand to his throat. "We better get a move on before we get a close-up of my lunch."
Go.
They backtracked along the course they had taken to get to the mine shaft and met their awaiting friends at the hole in the cellar. Once everything had been relayed about their finds, Roger shifted his focus to Sue. "If I were you, I'd plug this sucker back up. The last thing you want is to get that stink seeping upstairs or one of those sickos sneaking into your house."
Do what you have to do.
she said without hesitation. Good. Gary, Red, let's get this thing back where it rightfully belongs. The workmen braced against the huge stone and pushed until it crashed into the hole with a resounding thud. Roger commended his men for their effort before turning to Sue. Is it all right if I go ahead and seal it again?
Of course.
I'll use some of the roofing tar I've got out in the truck.
Fine. I owe you guys my life after this one.
No sweat.
Sorry for it being such a fiasco.
All in a day's work, Susan. We'll take care of this and then get back to finishing the third floor.
Thanks, guys. If you need me for anything, you know where to find me.
She crossed the cellar to the bulkhead, all the while hoping the men would miss the fact that she was experiencing trouble. Even though she was returning to finish her lovely rock garden, the garden whose sole purpose it was to bring joy and peace to her heart, she was arrested by completely opposing feelings. For deep in the framework of her mind, a constant repetition of disturbing images was at play. No matter what she did or what she tried, they broke through her defenses. Bones and bloody fur, wrapped in a bundle. With each new picture, another measure of damage was done. By the time she reached the far end of her backyard, she was thoroughly depressed.